Steve Harvey had been hosting Family Feud for 13 years, and in that time, he had learned to read people. He could tell within seconds which families would bring drama, which ones would bring laughter, and which ones would simply play the game and go home. But on that cloudy October afternoon in 2024, Steve was about to encounter something he had never experienced before. A moment so raw and unexpected that it would leave him, the studio audience, and millions of viewers completely speechless. Two families stood ready to compete in what everyone thought would be another entertaining episode. The Patterson family from Georgia faced off against the Martinez family from Texas. Both families looked excited and ready to win, but one woman, 39-year-old Jennifer Patterson, was carrying a secret that would soon change everything. A secret that had been buried for 7 years, hidden behind smiles and Sunday dinners and family photos that looked perfect on the outside. Before we get into this powerful story, I need you to do me a favor. Hit that like button right now and subscribe to this channel. What you're about to witness is one of the most emotional moments in Family Feud history, and your support helps us bring you more incredible true stories like this one. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Jennifer Patterson stood at the podium next to her husband of 15 years, Robert. To anyone watching, they looked like the perfect couple. Robert was handsome, successful, the kind of man who commanded attention when he walked into a room. He wore an expensive suit, his hair was perfectly styled, and he had the confident smile of someone who had never really struggled with anything in his life. Jennifer stood beside him wearing a simple blue dress, her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She wore minimal makeup, and her hands gripped the podium tightly, her knuckles slightly white from the pressure. There was something in her eyes, though, a wariness that went deeper than just nerves about being on television. Something that suggested this woman had been holding something heavy inside for far too long. The Patterson family had won the main game against the Martinez family, and now it was time for fast money. The family had decided that Robert would go first, as he always made decisions for them. Their daughter Emma, 13 years old, stood off to the side with Jennifer's mother and Robert's brother. Emma watched her mother with concern in her eyes, a look that suggested she knew something the cameras couldn't see. Steve approached Robert with his usual energy and warmth. Robert stood there with complete confidence, the kind of self-assurance that came from always being the smartest person in the room, or at least thinking you were. "Robert, you ready to win some money for your family?" Steve asked, his voice encouraging and upbeat. "Absolutely, Steve. I was born ready," Robert replied with a cocky grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. He glanced over at Jennifer, who managed a small smile that looked more like a grimace. "All right then, let's do this." 25 seconds on the clock. Steve launched into the rapid-fire questions that defined fast money. Name something people do on their lunch break at work. Eat. Robert answered quickly, clearly pleased with himself. Name a reason you might not answer your phone. You're busy, Robert said without hesitation. Name something a husband should remember about his wife. Robert paused for just a moment, his confidence flickering. Her birthday, he finally said. Name a place where people go to think. Church, Robert answered. Name the most romantic thing a husband can do for his wife. Buy her flowers, Robert said quickly, as if checking off a task on a to-do list. The buzzer sounded, and Steve nodded with his characteristic warmth. All right, Robert, good job. Let's see how you did. They moved to reveal the answers, and Robert scored a respectable 117 points. He would need 83 more points from Jennifer to win the $20,000. As Robert walked back to join the family, he gave Jennifer a quick pat on the shoulder. Don't screw this up, he whispered, just loud enough for the nearby microphones to pick up, though he didn't realize it. Jennifer's jaw tightened, but she said nothing as she walked to the podium. Steve noticed the change immediately. After more than a decade of reading contestants, he could sense when something was off. Jennifer looked like a woman standing on the edge of a cliff, trying to decide whether to jump or step back. Her hands were shaking slightly as she placed them on the podium, and she was blinking rapidly, fighting back tears that threatened to spill over. Jennifer, you okay, honey? Steve asked gently, his voice softer than it had been with Robert. The audience quieted, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. Jennifer nodded, not trusting her voice. She took a deep breath and forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm fine, Mr. Harvey. Let's do this." "All right, Jennifer, you need 83 points. 25 seconds on the clock." Steve paused, looking at her with concern. "You sure you're ready? I've been ready for 7 years," Jennifer said quietly, and there was something in her voice that made Steve's eyebrows raise slightly. It was the kind of statement that held years of meaning, though no one in the studio understood it yet. Steve began the questions, and what happened next would become one of the most talked about moments in game show history. Name something people do on their lunch break at work. Fry in their car. Jennifer answered, her voice steady despite the tears that were now visible in her eyes. The audience laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke, but Steve saw the truth in her face. Name a reason you might not answer your phone. Because your husband tracks your calls, Jennifer said, and the laughter stopped completely. The studio went silent. Name something a husband should remember about his wife. Jennifer's voice broke slightly. That she's a person with feelings and dreams, not just someone who cooks and cleans. Steve stood very still, his hand raised slightly as if to stop the game, but Jennifer wasn't finished. The dam was breaking. Name a place where people go to think. Their car, parked outside their own house, because it's the only place they can be alone. Jennifer said, tears now streaming down her face. Name the most romantic thing a husband can do for his wife. Jennifer looked directly at Robert, who was standing frozen with the family, his face pale. And then she said the words that would change everything. "Notice her," Jennifer whispered, but the microphone picked up every word perfectly. "Just notice that she exists." The buzzer sounded, but no one moved. The studio was completely silent except for Jennifer's quiet crying. Steve Harvey, a man who built his career on always knowing what to say, stood speechless for several long seconds. He slowly walked over to Jennifer and gently touched her arm. "Jennifer," he said softly, his voice filled with compassion, "I think we need to stop for a minute. Are you okay?" Jennifer shook her head, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "No, Mr. Harvey. I'm not okay. I haven't been okay for 7 years, but for the first time in 7 years I'm telling the truth." The audience sat frozen, watching something raw and real unfold in front of them. Robert took a step forward, but Emma grabbed his arm, stopping him. The look on the 13-year-old's face suggested she knew exactly what her mother was about to say. "Jennifer, do you want to talk about this?" Steve asked gently. "We can stop the show, we can take a break." "No," Jennifer said, her voice growing stronger despite the tears. "I need to say this. I need to say it in front of all these people, in front of the cameras, in front of my husband, because if I don't say it now, I never will." Steve nodded slowly, honoring her need to speak. "Okay, honey. The floor is yours." Jennifer turned to face Robert directly, and the cameras captured every moment of what happened next. "Robert, for 15 years I have been invisible in our marriage. For 15 years, you have treated me like a piece of furniture in our house. Something useful, something necessary, but something you never really see or appreciate. I have cooked your meals, cleaned your house, raised your daughter, managed your social calendar, remembered every birthday and anniversary, supported your career, and slowly disappeared until I didn't even recognize myself anymore." Robert's face had gone from pale to red. "Jennifer, this isn't the time or place," he started, but Steve raised his hand. "Let her speak," Steve said firmly. "She has the floor." Jennifer continued, her voice shaking but determined. "Do you know what my favorite color is, Robert? Do you know what I wanted to be before I gave up everything to marry you? Do you know that I've been taking antidepressants for the past 5 years? Do you know that our daughter asked me last week why I always look so sad?" Robert stood silent, unable to answer a single question. Emma was crying now, holding on to her grandmother's hand. "When you answered that question about what a husband should remember about his wife, you said her birthday. But Robert, you forgot my birthday 3 years in a row. I stopped caring after the 3rd time. When you said the most romantic thing a husband can do is buy flowers, do you know when the last time you bought me flowers was? It was 11 years ago, right before Emma was born. And even then, You had your secretary order them. Jennifer turned back to Steve, who was listening with his complete attention. Mr. Harvey, when you asked me those questions, I couldn't give the answers that would win the game. I could only give the truth about what my life has actually been like. Steve's eyes were glistening with emotion. Jennifer, I want you to know something. You just gave answers that probably won't be on the board. But you gave answers that millions of women, and probably quite a few men, are living with right now. Feeling invisible, feeling unappreciated, feeling like they exist only to serve others. He turned to Robert. Sir, your wife just told you, and the whole world, that she's drowning. The question is, are you listening? Robert's face showed a mixture of shame, anger, and something that might have been the beginning of understanding. He opened his mouth to speak, but Jennifer held up her hand. I'm not done, she said. I need to finish this, because once we leave this studio, life will go back to normal. You'll go back to your important job and your golf games and your business trips. I'll go back to being the invisible woman who makes sure everything runs smoothly. But for these few minutes, I need you to really hear me. The audience was completely captivated. Some people were crying. Others sat with their hands over their mouths. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was real life, unfiltered and raw. 7 years ago, I was in a car accident, Jennifer said, and this was clearly news to everyone except Emma, whose tears intensified. It wasn't serious, just a fender bender in a parking lot, but I was alone and I was scared and I called you, Robert. Do you remember what you said? Robert shook his head slightly, his face showing he had no memory of this. You said you were in an important meeting and couldn't talk. You told me to handle it myself and hung up. I sat in that parking lot for 2 hours, shaking and crying, handling the police report and the insurance claims all by myself. When you came home that night, I tried to tell you about it, and you said, "That's what you're supposed to do. Deal with things." That was the day I realized I was truly alone in this marriage. Steve's expression showed his shock and sadness. Jennifer, why did you stay? Because I thought it would get better. Jennifer said simply, because I thought if I just tried harder, was more patient, more understanding, more perfect, that eventually you would see me. That eventually you would realize I was more than just the person who kept your life organized. But it never happened. And then years passed, and I had a daughter to think about, and I convinced myself that a functioning marriage was good enough. That at least we didn't fight. That at least you were a good provider. She looked at Robert again. But it's not enough, Robert. A marriage without love, without appreciation, without even basic acknowledgement of each other's humanity. That's not a marriage. That's just two people living in the same house. Robert finally found his voice. Jennifer, I didn't know. I thought you were happy. You never said anything? I tried to say something 1,000 times, Jennifer said, her voice breaking. Every time I suggested we go on a date, you were too busy. Every time I tried to talk about my feelings, you told me I was being too sensitive. Every time I asked you to help with something around the house, you reminded me that you were the one who paid the bills. After a while, I just stopped trying. It was easier to be quiet than to be constantly dismissed. Steve spoke up, his voice gentle but firm. Robert, I need to ask you something. When was the last time you asked your wife how she was feeling? Not about what needed to be done or what was for dinner, but how she was actually feeling. Robert stood silent for a long moment. I don't remember. When was the last time you told her you appreciated her? Another long silence. I don't know. When was the last time you did something, anything just to make her smile? Robert's shoulders slumped. I can't remember, he admitted, his voice barely audible. Steve turned back to Jennifer. Honey, we still need to reveal your answers and see if you won the money. Are you okay to continue? Jennifer nodded, wiping her eyes. Yes, let's finish this. Steve slowly walked to the board. You said people cry in their car during lunch breaks. He revealed the answer. Number 4 on the board with 18 points. The audience applauded softly, many of them still crying. You said you might not answer your phone because your husband tracks your calls. Steve's face showed his concern as he revealed the board. It wasn't there. 0 points. But the weight of what she had revealed hung heavy in the air. You said a husband should remember that his wife is a person with feelings and dreams. Steve looked at the board. It showed 0 points, but he addressed the audience. This should be the #1 answer. This should be what everyone says. The audience erupted in applause, agreeing with him. You said people go to their car to think, because it's the only place they can be alone. The board showed the #3 answer with 21 points. More applause, mixed with understanding murmurs from the audience. And you said the most romantic thing a husband can do is notice his wife exists. Steve's voice was thick with emotion. 0 points on the board, but he turned to the camera. Ladies and gentlemen, Jennifer didn't win the game according to the survey, but she won something more important. She told her truth, and sometimes that's worth more than all the money in the world. The audience stood, giving Jennifer a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Jennifer stood at the podium, crying but also looking lighter somehow, as if a tremendous weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Steve called the family forward. Robert walked slowly toward Jennifer, and when he reached her, he did something he rarely did. He looked at her, really looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time in years. "Jennifer, I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. You're right about everything. I've been selfish and blind, and I've taken you for granted. I don't know how to fix this, but I want to try. I want to really try." Emma ran to her mother and wrapped her arms around her. "Mum, I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "I've been so scared for you." Steve addressed the family with compassion. "Listen, you didn't win the $20,000 today. But I'm going to tell you something. Money can't fix what's broken here. What you need is time, honest communication, and probably professional help. I want you to take the money you would have won, find a good marriage counselor, and commit to doing the hard work of rebuilding your relationship, not for the cameras, not for anyone else, but for yourselves and your daughter." He turned to the audience. "We've just witnessed something powerful. We've seen what happens when someone finally finds the courage to speak their truth after years of silence. Jennifer reminded us all that marriages aren't about the big gestures or the fancy gifts. They're about seeing each other, really seeing each other, every single day." The taping concluded, but what happened afterward was equally remarkable. As the Patterson family prepared to leave, dozens of audience members approached Jennifer. Women and men both, sharing their own stories of feeling invisible, of being taken for granted, of losing themselves in marriages that looked perfect from the outside but were hollow within. Jennifer listened to each person, hugged them, and told them they deserved to be seen too. Steve pulled Robert aside for a private conversation. "Man, I'm going to be straight with you. You're standing at a crossroads right now. You can either wake up and realize what an incredible woman you have, or you can lose her forever. Your wife just showed more courage in 10 minutes than most people show in a lifetime. The question is, are you going to match that courage with real change?" Robert nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I don't even know where to start. Start by asking her how she is and actually listening to the answer." Steve said simply, "Start by noticing the small things she does every day. Start by putting your phone down when she talks to you. Start by making her a priority instead of an afterthought. It's not complicated, Robert. It just requires you to actually care about someone other than yourself." When the episode aired 6 weeks later, the response was unprecedented. The network's servers crashed from the flood of social media activity. The hashtag #NoticeHer trended worldwide for 5 days. Marriage counselors across the country reported a massive surge in appointment requests from couples who had seen the episode and recognized themselves in the Patterson story. The clip of Jennifer's answers went viral, shared millions of times across every platform. But it wasn't just the entertainment value that made it spread. It was the raw honesty, the courage, the universal experience of feeling unseen by the people who are supposed to love you most. Mental health professionals praised Jennifer for bringing attention to the quiet epidemic of emotional neglect in marriages. Articles were written about the importance of emotional presence in relationships. Universities included the clip in psychology and sociology courses about marriage and family dynamics. But the most significant impact was personal and individual. Thousands of people wrote letters to the show describing how Jennifer's moment had given them the courage to speak up in their own relationships. Some marriages ended because people realized they couldn't continue living invisibly. Other marriages transformed as partners finally started really seeing and appreciating each other. The network made the unusual decision to do a follow-up segment with the Patterson family 6 months later. When Jennifer and Robert returned to the Family Feud stage, the change in their dynamic was immediately visible. They held hands as they walked out, and when Steve asked them about their journey, they both became emotional. Jennifer spoke first. "Mr. Harvey, that day changed everything. We didn't win the money, but we saved our marriage. It wasn't easy. We spent hours in counseling, had conversations that were painful and difficult, faced truths we had been avoiding for years. But we did the work." Robert added, his voice thick with emotion, "Steve, you asked me when I last noticed my wife. That question haunted me for weeks. I started keeping a journal, writing down one thing I noticed about Jennifer every day. Her kindness with Emma, her patience with difficult situations, her quiet strength, the way she makes our house feel like a home. All the things I had been blind to for so long." He turned to Jennifer. "I learned that my wife is an incredible artist. Did you know that? For 15 years I lived with an artist and never knew it because I never asked. She paints these beautiful watercolors in the garage late at night, after everyone is asleep. She's been doing it for years, hiding this amazing talent because I made her feel like her interests didn't matter." Jennifer smiled, tears in her eyes. "Robert bought me a studio space. A real studio with proper lighting and supplies. He encourages me to paint, asks about my work, comes to local art shows with me. He sees me now, really sees me." Steve was visibly moved. "This is what I'm talking about. This is what happens when people are brave enough to speak their truth and brave enough to listen." Emma joined them on stage, and she had her own perspective to share. "Mr. Harvey, watching my mom that day was scary but also amazing. I saw her stand up for herself, and it taught me that I should never settle for being invisible, that I deserve to be seen and valued by whoever I choose to be within the future." The follow-up segment showed the family at Jennifer's first solo art exhibition. The paintings were stunning, emotional pieces that captured the journey from darkness to light, from invisibility to being seen. Robert stood proudly beside her, greeting visitors and talking enthusiastically about his wife's talent. The episode concluded with Steve's message to the viewers. Jennifer Patterson did something on this show that changed her life and touched millions of others. She spoke up. She refused to stay silent. She demanded to be seen. And her husband, to his credit, listened and changed. He continued, "I want everyone watching to ask themselves a question. When was the last time you really saw your partner? Not just looked at them, but really saw them. When was the last time you asked about their dreams, their fears, their hopes? When was the last time you made them feel like they matter, not just for what they do, but for who they are?" Steve's voice grew more passionate. "Marriage is not a business arrangement where one person provides money and the other provides services. Marriage is a partnership of two whole human beings who choose every day to see each other, value each other, and love each other for who they really are. If you're not doing that, you're not really married. You're just two people living in the same house, and that's not enough." The impact of Jennifer's story continued to ripple outward for years. She became an advocate for emotional wellness in marriages, speaking at events and sharing her journey from invisibility to self-worth. Her artwork gained recognition, with several pieces being displayed in galleries across the Southeast. Robert became involved in men's groups focused on emotional intelligence and healthy relationships. He openly shared his story of how close he came to losing everything because he couldn't see what was right in front of him. His honesty about his failures made him an effective advocate for change. 3 years after the original episode, the Patterson family appeared on Steve Harvey's talk show. They shared that their marriage was stronger than it had ever been, built on a foundation of real communication, mutual respect, and genuine appreciation for each other. During that interview, Steve asked Jennifer what she would say to other women who feel invisible in their relationships. Her answer was simple but powerful. "Speak up," she said. "Your voice matters. Your feelings matter. You matter. Don't wait for someone to notice you. Demand to be seen. Require the people in your life to acknowledge your full humanity. And if they won't, if they can't, then you need to make hard decisions about whether you're willing to live the rest of your life being invisible. She continued, I think about that day on Family Feud, standing at that podium, finally saying all the things I had held inside for years. I was terrified, but I was also exhausted from carrying all that pain alone. Sometimes you reach a point where the fear of speaking up is less than the pain of staying silent. That's when you know it's time. Robert added his perspective. And to the partners out there who might be doing what I was doing, just sleepwalking through your marriage, taking your spouse for granted, I want to say this: wake up, look at the person you married. Really look at them. Ask them how they are. Listen to the answer. Notice what they do, who they are, what they dream about. Do it today, right now, before it's too late. The Patterson family's story became a cultural touchstone, referenced in countless articles, books, and conversations about marriage and relationships. But perhaps the most meaningful testament to its impact was the letters that continued to arrive at the network for years afterward. One letter from a woman in Ohio described how watching Jennifer's moment had given her the courage to finally tell her husband of 30 years that she felt invisible. That conversation had been difficult, but had ultimately saved their marriage. They celebrated their 35th anniversary by renewing their vows, this time with real understanding of what those vows meant. Another letter came from a young man about to get married. He wrote that watching the episode had made him realize he needed to actively work every day to make sure his future wife always felt seen and valued. The episode had become a teaching tool for him and his fiancée, a reminder of what to avoid and what to aspire to. Mental health professionals wrote to thank Jennifer for bringing national attention to the issue of emotional neglect in relationships. Several major health organizations began including information about emotional presence and appreciation in their marriage preparation programs, directly citing the impact of the Family Feud episode. 5 years after that fateful day, the Pattersons returned to Family Feud one final time, not as contestants but as presenters of a new award the show had created. The Jennifer Patterson Award for Courage would be given annually to a contestant who demonstrated exceptional bravery in speaking an important truth. During that appearance, Steve reflected on the impact of that October afternoon. In 13 years of hosting this show, I've seen thousands of families. I've witnessed amazing moments, funny moments, touching moments. But Jennifer Patterson's moment stands alone as the most powerful thing I've ever been part of. She didn't just play a game. She changed lives. She started a national conversation. She reminded us all what really matters in our relationships. He turned to Jennifer and Robert. Looking at you two now, seeing how far you've come, it gives me hope. It shows that change is possible, that marriages can heal, that people can learn to really see each other. Thank you for sharing your journey with all of us. As this remarkable story draws to a close, it's important to reflect on the central truth that Jennifer Patterson brought into the light that October afternoon in 2024. Being seen by the people who claim to love us is not optional. It's essential. It's the foundation of every healthy relationship. It's what transforms a house into a home, a legal contract into a genuine partnership, coexistence into true connection. Jennifer's courage in speaking her truth after 7 years of silence gave millions of people permission to examine their own relationships, to ask themselves if they were truly seeing their partners or just going through the motions. Her willingness to be vulnerable on national television created space for difficult but necessary conversations in living rooms across the world. The Patterson family proved that it's never too late to start really seeing each other, to ask the questions that matter, to listen to the answers, to value the people we love for who they truly are. They showed that marriages can transform when both partners commit to the hard work of genuine connection, mutual respect, and daily appreciation. If you've made it this far in this story, I want you to do something right now. Think about the most important person in your life. When was the last time you really saw them? When was the last time you asked about their inner world and truly listened to their answer? When was the last time you made them feel valued not for what they do for you, but for who they are. And if you're the one who feels invisible, remember Jennifer's courage. You have the right to be seen. You have the right to demand that the people who claim to love you actually know who you are. Speaking up is frightening, but staying invisible for the rest of your life is worse. Before you go, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to this channel. We bring you powerful true stories like this one that remind us what really matters in life. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's feeling invisible, or someone who might not realize they've stopped seeing the person they love. The Patterson family showed us that one moment of courage can change everything. One honest conversation can save a marriage. One person speaking their truth can inspire millions. That's not just winning a game show. That's winning at life by making sure the people we love know they are seen, valued, and cherished for exactly